Dance of the Dragons. The Dance of the Dragons, also known as the Dying of the Dragons, was a civil war during Targaryen rule of the Seven Kingdoms. A war of succession between Aegon II and his half-sister Renura over their father Viserys I's throne. The war was fought from 129 AC to 131 AC. It saw the deaths of both rival monarchs and the crowning of Renura's son, Aegon III. In early 2013, George R.R. Martin announced that the anthology Dangerous Women, previously expected to include the fourth Dunk and Egg story, would instead include the novella The Princess and the Queen, which Martin described as the true, mostly, story of the origins of the Dance of the Dragons. The abridged version in The Princess and the Queen consists of 30,000 words, while the complete 80,000-word history of the Civil War is written in fire and blood. King Viserys I Targaryen had 3 children by his first queen, Aemma Arryn, but only one, Princess Renura, survived to adulthood. Lacking a son to succeed him, Viserys began to train Renura to be his heir. Young Renura was included in discussions of the affairs of state, and was allowed to participate in meetings of the small council. Many of the nobles took note, and Renura soon acquired a clique of adherents and supporters. After the passing of Queen Aemma in 105 AC, Viserys named Renura his heir, and hundreds of lords and landed knights paid obeisance to her. Viserys' declaration disregarded precedents from 92 AC and 101 AC. The king remarried in 106 AC, this time to Alicent Hightower, and had 4 more children, Aegon, Helena, Aemond, and Daeron. In 111 AC, a great tourney was held at King's Landing on the 5th anniversary of Viserys' marriage to Alicent. During the opening feast, Queen Alicent wore a green gown, while Princess Renura dressed in the red and black of House Targaryen. Note was taken, and thereafter it became the custom to refer to greens and blacks when talking of the Queen's party and the party of the princess, respectively. Wearing Renura's favor, Ser Criston Cole unhorsed all of Alicent's champions in the tourney, including 2 of her cousins and her youngest brother, Ser Gawain Hightower. Viserys I strengthened Renura's place in the succession by marrying her in 114 AC to Ser Laenor Velaryon, who himself had Targaryen blood through his mother, Princess Rhaenys. The marriage caused a falling out between Renura and Criston. Renura gave birth to 3 sons, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey Velaryon, during her marriage, although there were rumors that the father of these princes was not Laenor, but Ser Harwin Strong. After Laenor was murdered in Spicetown in 120 AC, Renura married her uncle, Prince Daemon Targaryen, younger brother to Viserys I. Her sons by him were Aegon the Younger, called so to distinguish him from his uncle, Alicent's Aegon, who on occasion was called Aegon the Elder, and Viserys. The relationship between Renura and Alicent declined early in Alicent's marriage to Viserys, since both ladies had been trying to be the realm's first lady, and there could only be one. As a consequence of their bad relation, Alicent's sons did not take to Renura's sons. Alicent's father, Ser Otto Hightower, had also disliked Renura's second husband, Prince Daemon, since the beginning of Viserys' reign, though the exact reasons are unknown. The Dance of the Dragons. The Small Council Meeting. Upon the death of King Viserys I Targaryen, Queen Alicent and Ser Criston Cole sent out the Kingsguard to summon the small council members. During the gathering, the conversation quickly stirred towards Renura's coronation, but Ser Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, told those who had gathered that Prince Aegon the Elder would be crowned, whilst Lord Lyman Beesbury, the Master of Coin, insisted Renura should be crowned as queen. Several other council members countered him. Ser Tyland Lannister argued that the oaths made to Renura in 105 AC had not been made by them, since it had been 24 years. Lord Jasper Wilde mentioned that the old King Jaehaerys I twice chose a male heir over the female heir and her descendants, and Ser Otto argued that Renura was married to Prince Daemon, who would become the true ruler should Renura gain the crown. Both Hightowers argued that not only they, but also Alicent's children would die should Renura become their queen. It would later be said that Prince Aegon only reluctantly accepted the crown because his mother, brothers, sister and children would otherwise be killed by Renura. Grand Maester Orwyle predicted a war, believing that Renura would never be willing to give up her birthright, and had dragons at her disposal. When Lyman declared that he was not willing to listen to people plotting to steal her crown and attempted to leave, Ser Criston killed him. This made Lord Beesbury the first casualty of the Dance of the Dragons. After Beesbury's death, the Green Council made their plans, vowing their loyalty to their new king, and arresting all those in King's Landing who could be loyal to Renura. To all those who might be loyal to Aegon, ravens were sent. Meanwhile, Renura remained on Dragonstone, unaware of what had happened. Coronation of Aegon Ii. Prince Aemond was sent to Storm's End to betroth himself to one of Lord Barrows Baratheon's daughters, so House Baratheon might fight for Aegon II. By the time he left, the smell coming from Viserys's room was all over Maegor's Holdfast. 7 days after Viserys had died, his death was announced to King's Landing and the Silent Sisters were sent for. Aegon's coronation was hastily prepared. The Dragonpit was chosen as the site for its towering bronze doors, strong roof, and thick walls made it easily defensible. Ser Criston Cole crowned Aegon, while Alicent Hightower crowned Aegon's sister wife, Helaena. The night before, however, the first defection had taken place. Ser Steffan Darklyn of the Kingsguard had left the city, with, amongst other things, the crown worn by kings, Jaehaerys I and Viserys I. On Dragonstone, Renura had learned about the death of her father and the betrayal of her siblings. Anger had made her go into labor, which lasted for 3 days and brought forth a stillborn, deformed girl, whom Renura named Visenya. Renura, in answer to Aegon's betrayal, swore revenge. The Black Council and Coronation of Renura. Renura made her own council at Dragonstone, the Black Council. Participants were, amongst others, her uncle-husband Daemon, her 3 eldest sons Jacaerys, Lucerys and Joffrey, Lord Corlys Velaryon, and his wife, Princess Rhaenys. During the council it was resolved that while Renura remained at Dragonstone to regain her health, Prince Daemon and Caraxes would travel to the Riverlands, to make Harrenhal their base and rallying point for those loyal to Renura. House Velaryon would close off the gullet blocking all shipping from Blackwater Bay. Princess Rhaenys was convinced that Storm's End would declare for Renura, since Lord Bormund Baratheon, the deceased father of Lord Barrows and Rhaenys' uncle, had always been a supporter of Rhaenys. Prince Daemon also was convinced that Lady Jane Eyre, the Maiden of the Vale, would bring her support to their side. Though they believed the North to be too remote to play an important part in the war, messages were to be sent to those lords nevertheless. Renura was crowned queen, using the crown her father and great-grandfather had worn, thanks to Ser Steffan Darklyn, who had arrived from King's Landing. Prince Daemon placed the crown on Renura's head himself and was named Protector of the Realm, and Jacaerys was officially named Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne. Declaring Ser Otto Hightower and Queen Alicent traitors, Renura allowed for her half-siblings to be forgiven if they would bend the knee. Upon hearing these developments, King Aegon II declared Renura and Daemon traitors as well. After being persuaded by his mother, Alicent and sister, Helaena, Aegon dispatched Grand Maester Orwyle to Dragonstone with a retinue under a peace banner, offering Renura generous terms, but was refused. Not long after, but not before swearing on the 7-pointed star to go only as messengers, not knights, did Renura's sons depart. With the eldest Jacaerys visiting the Arryns of the Eyrie, the Manderleys of White Harbor, and the Starks of Winterfell. Renura's second son, Lucerys, traveled to Storm's End. Assault on Harrenhal. Prince Daemon led the Blacks' attack on Harrenhal, which was conquered without bloodshed in 129 AC. The Castellan, Ser Simon Strong, yielded when Caraxes landed on Kingsfire Tower. This conquest led to victories of the Blacks at the Burning Mill and Stone Hedge and allowed the river lords, such as House Blackwood, to gather at Harrenhal. In the meantime, Jacaerys gained Lady Arryn and the lords Manderley, Burrell, and Sunderland, and Cregan Stark to Renura's cause, with Cregan allying through the Pact of Ice and Fire. The dance over Shipbreaker Bay. Lucerys flew to Storm's End, arriving before a gathering storm. He found Prince Aemond and his Dragonvagor already present. Aemond tried to goad Lucerys into a fight, insulting him, calling him a strong bastard, but Lucerys, sworn not to fight, refused him. He delivered his message to Lord Barrows Baratheon, but was refused and told to leave. Barrows prevented Aemond from attacking his cousin in the castle, but did allow for the prince to follow him. Mounted on his dragon, Aemond caught up with Lucerys during a raging storm. The fight between the two dragons did not last long. Vagor, being 5 times bigger, had the advantage, and Eryx fell broken. His head and neck washed ashore 3 days later, along with the corpse of Lucerys. Blood and cheese. Renura collapsed when learning of Lucerys' death. Prince Daemon, at Harrenhal, sent a raven to his wife, promising that her son's death would be avenged. Using one of his friends from King's Landing, Daemon enlisted the help of a former sergeant in the City Watch, known now only as Blood, and a rat catcher from the Red Keep, known now only as Cheese. The two sneaked into the Red Keep, using secret tunnels and hidden doors, which brought them into the Tower of the Hand. There, Queen Alicent was bound and gagged, and her bedmaid strangled. When Queen Helena and her 3 children appeared, Blood and Cheese barred the doors and told Helena to choose which of her sons would die. Helena reluctantly chose Maelor, but Blood did the opposite and killed Prince Jaehaerys instead. The 2 fled with the prince's head, leaving the others unharmed. Blood was seized at the Gate of the Gods, with the head of Prince Jaehaerys hidden in a saddle sack. Under torture, he confessed he was making for Harrenhal, to collect his reward from Prince Daemon. He also described the whore who had hired him and Cheese, Miseria. The Gold Cloaks, led by Ser Luther Largent, searched the Street of Silk from top to bottom but found no trace of Miseria or Cheese. In his wrath, King Aegon II ordered all the rat-catchers in the city to be hanged. Afterward, Ser Otto Hightower brought 100 cats to the Red Keep to take their place. Queen Helena sank into a deep depression, refusing to eat, bathe, or leave her chambers and couldn't stand to be in the presence of Maelor, having named him to die. Thus, the king took Maelor from her and gave him to Queen Alicent to raise as if he were her own. Thereafter, king and queen slept separately. She fell deeper into madness, while Aegon fell into rage and drink. Civil war in the Riverlands. After the deaths of both princes, both sides called for vengeance. Lords called their banners and marched their armies. The forces of House Blackwood, which had declared for Renura, invaded the lands of the green-aligned House Bracken, putting villages to the torch and despoiling septs. The Bracken forces were surprised by the Blackwoods while on the march and were ultimately defeated in the Battle of the Burning Mill. The survivors turned back to Stonehenge, only to find it had been seized by the Blacks in their absence. The Brackens yielded and thus King Aegon lost his last supporter in the Riverlands. The New Green Hand. Ser Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, took to winning over lords, hiring sellswords, strengthening the defenses of King's Landing and seeking other alliances. He sent ravens to Winterfell, the Eyrie, Riverrun, White Harbor, Goldtown, Bitterbridge, Fair Isle and half 100 other seats. He sent riders to the holdings closer to the capital, to summon their lords and ladies to court to do fealty to King Aegon. He also reached out to Dorne, which had fought against Daemon in the war for the Stepstones, but Prince Corin Martell refused to take part. The fall of Harrenhal and the defeats at the Burning Mill and Stonehenge made Aegon II fearful. His fears deepened when ravens returned from the Reach, where the Greens thought themselves strongest, as Lords Costane, Mullendore, Tarly, Rowan, and Grimm declared for Renura. Such division led the Castellan, steward and mother of the young Lord Tyrell, in their role as regents, to refuse to take part. Ser Otto sent word to his nephew, Lord Ormond Hightower, to put down the rebellions in the Reach. More blows came to Aegon II in the form of rejections from the Vale and the North, and the constant complaints of merchants for the closing of Blackwater Bay by the Sea Snake's fleets. With his overtures to Dalton Greyjoy ignored, Ser Otto sent envoys to the Kingdom of the Three Daughters, promising exclusive trading rights at King's Landing as well as ceding the Stepstones even though the Iron Throne had never claimed them if they would clear the gullet of the Valerian fleet. The Triarchy was slow to move, however, as all important decisions were left in the hands of a High Council. The delay did not sit well with Aegon II, who dismissed his grandfather as Hand of the King and turned to Ser Criston Cole. Ser Criston's first advice to the king was to treat those who denied him fealty as traitors. Thus all the Blacks imprisoned in the dungeons were dragged to the Red Keep's yard before the king's justice and his axe. Each prisoner was given a last chance to swear fealty to King Aegon. Only Lords Butterwell, Stokeworth and Rosby bent the knee to Aegon II, while Lords Hayford, Merryweather, Hart, Buckler, Caswell and Lady Fell remained true to their vows to defend Renner's rights, and were beheaded along with 8 landed knights and 20 servants and retainers. Their heads were mounted on spikes above the gates of King's Landing. Duel of the Cargill Twins. Not even the Kingsguard were unaffected by the dance. The 7 sworn brothers split upon the death of King Viserys I. Ser Laurent Marbrand and Ser Eric Cargill were already at Dragonstone defending Renura and her Blacks, later being joined by Ser Steffan Darklyn, the 3 forming the core of her new Queensguard. The other 4, Ser Criston Cole, Ser Eric Cargill, Ser Ricard Thorne, and Ser Willis Fell, sided with Aegon II and his Greens at King's Landing. Desiring revenge for the murder of his heir, Aegon meant to descend on Dragonstone atop Sunfire to seize or slay his half-sister and her bastard sons. The Green Council managed to dissuade him. Ser Criston, still Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, proposed using stealth and treachery as the Pretender Princess had done. Thus he tasked Ser Eric with infiltrating Dragonstone in the guise of his twin, Ser Eric. It is uncertain whether he was to kill Renura or her children, as accounts differ. According to Eustace, Ser Eric visited the Red Keep Sept to pray forgiveness from the Mother above. Munkin states the target was Renura, while Mushroom insists it was her sons Jacaerys and Joffrey Strong. But the twins happened to come upon each other in one of the halls of the castle's citadel and fought to the death. According to songs, the brothers professed their love as their swords clashed, dying in one another's arms after fighting for an hour with duty in their hearts. However, the account of Mushroom, who claimed to have witnessed the duel, they condemned each other as traitors and were both mortally wounded within moments.
Duskendale and Rook's Rest. Harrenhal and the Burning Mill made the young king, Aegon II, realize his situation was severe. While House Hightower of Old Town and House Redwyne of the Arbor stood firmly behind Aegon, Lord Owen Costane of Three Towers, Lord Mullendor of Uplands, Lord Alan Tarley of Hornhill, Lord Thaddeus Rowan of Golden Grove and Lord Grim of Greyshield declared for Renura, as did the Vale of Arryn, White Harbour, Winterfell, the Blackwoods and other river lords, who were assembling at Harrenhal. Ser Otto Hightower believed that Daemon was Renura's greatest weakness, and reached out to an old foe of Daemon's, the Kingdom of the Three Daughters across the Narrow Sea, hoping to use them against Corlys Velaryon. Aegon II was running out of patience, however, and removed Otto as hand. Ser Criston Cole was named in his stead, and decided quick actions were necessary. Aegon acted by sacking Duskendale, and having Lord Darklyn beheaded for supporting Renura. Criston then turned his attention to Rook's Rest, for House Staunton had pledged their support to Renura as well. Lord Staunton defied his attackers and dispatched a raven to Dragonstone. Princess Rhaenys arrived on her dragon, Malaise, but Criston's men attacked the dragon with scorpions, longbows, and crossbows in the battle at Rook's Rest in 129 AC. When Sunfire and Vhagar also appeared, the dragons fought 1,000 feet above the ground. Malaise's jaws closed around Sunfire's neck, and Vhagar fell upon them, causing all three dragons to crash. From the ashes, only Vhagar rose again. Sunfire had one wing half torn from his body, whilst his rider, King Aegon II, suffered several broken bones and severe burns. Rhaenys was found completely burned next to Malaise. After the battle, Prince Aemond and Criston took Rook's Rest and put the garrison to death. The head of Malaise was brought back to King's Landing, inspiring fear amongst the small folk and causing thousands to flee the capital until the gates were barred by Dowager Queen Alicent. Aegon was brought back to King's Landing, where maesters attended his severe wounds while he slept under the influence of milk of the poppy. Sunfire was too large to be moved and was unable to fly. The dragon remained at Rook's Rest, where guards were posted to keep him safe and fed. With Aegon unable to rule, Aemond assumed the style of protector of the realm. The Dragon Seeds. Lord Corlys Velaryon, upon learning of the death of his wife Rhaenys, threatened to leave Renura's cause, until Prince Jacaerys named him Hand of the Queen. They sent Prince Joffrey to the Vale of Arryn with Lady Rhaena and 3 dragon eggs and Joffrey's dragon Tyraxes. Prince Aegon the Younger and Prince Viserys were sent to Pentos on the Gay Abandon to be fostered with the Prince of Pentos, a friend of Daemon's, until Renura had secured the Iron Throne. Jacaerys wanted to attack the capital with as many dragons as possible. With 6 riderless dragons present on Dragonstone, Jacaerys called out to dragon seeds, promising knighthood and wealth to anyone who could master a dragon. Many were injured or died, amongst them Lord Commander Steffon Darklyn, though 4 people eventually succeeded. Vermithor was claimed by Hugh Hammer, Silverwing by Ulf the White, Seasmoke by Adam of Hull, and Sheepstealer by a girl named Nettles. Corlys asked Renura to remove the taint of bastardy from Adam and his brother Alan, making them true Velaryons, and he named Adam heir to Driftmark. Battle of the Gullet. Meanwhile, 90 warships sailing from the Stepstones chanced upon the Gay Abandon carrying Prince Aegon the Younger and Prince Viserys in 129 AC. The escorting ships were sunk or taken. Prince Aegon managed to escape by clinging to the neck of his dragon, Stormcloud, who was mortally wounded but delivered Aegon back to Dragonstone. Viserys, having only a dragon egg, was unable to escape, and was made a captive of Admiral Shirako Lohar of Lys. Aegon managed to make it to Dragonstone, and Prince Jacaerys on Vermax flew to the Lysene galleys, quickly followed by the 4 dragon seeds. The warships tried to flee, but in the fighting Vermax flew too low and crashed into the sea. Jacaerys leaped free, but was pierced by quarrels. The 28 Lysene ships that survived sacked Spicetown on their way back, and butchered men, women, and children. High tide, containing all of Lord Corlys Valerian's treasures, was consumed by fire, 1/3 of his fleet being destroyed. Battle of the Honey Wine. A fortnight later, Lord Ormond Hightower found himself stuck between two armies. Lord Thaddeus Rowan and Tom Flowers, from Golden Grove and Bitter Bridge, came down on him from the northeast, while Sir Alan Beesbury, Lord Alan Tarley, and Lord Owen Costane were cutting off the retreat route back to Old Town. They closed around him, but Prince Daeron and his dragon Tessarion joined the battle. Tom Flowers died, Lord Rowan fled, the Allans were captured, and Lord Costane was mortally wounded. The victory in the Battle of the Honey Wine in 129 AC led to Ormond knighting Daeron, naming him Daeron the Daring.
The Red Fork and the Fish Feed. Meanwhile, Lord Whaley's Mutund retook Rook's Rest but died attempting to kill the wounded Sunfire. When some of his men returned, Sunfire had disappeared. They found no tracks, suggesting Sunfire had taken wing again despite his wounds. The dragon would not be seen for another half-year. While the North assembled forces, Prince Aemond believed Daemon and his host at Harrenhal to be the real danger. Aemond and Ser Criston Cole rode from King's Landing with a host of 4,000 and the Dragonvagger into the Riverlands. Daemon knew of their plans before Aemond had left the capital, however, and he hastened south on Caraxes, staying well away from Criston's line of march. Aemond and Criston found Harrenhal abandoned after a 19-day march, believing themselves victorious. An army of Greens from the Westerlands defeated the Western River Lords in the battle at the Red Fork early in 130 AC. Their leader, Lord Jason Lannister, was mortally wounded by Ser Pate of Longleaf during the battle, however, and Ser Adrian Tarbeck was slain 3 days after the battle at Acorn Hall. Old Lord Humphrey Lefford took command of the Lannister host, which marched east with the intention of joining Criston and Aemond. At the western shores of the God's Eye, the Westermen came across Lord Roderick Dustin with his Winter Wolves, who had combined his forces with Lord Forrest Fry and Red Rob Rivers. From the south, Pate the Lion's Lair and Lords Bigglestone, Chambers, and Perrin locked him in. Lords Garibald Grey, John Charlton, and Benjicott Blackwood joined with the Northmen and other rivermen the following day, while Lord Lefford's ravens were shot down. The day after, they began their battle, which would become the bloodiest land battle of the dance. Hundreds died that day in the battle by the lakeshore, also called the Fish Feed, which destroyed the Lannister host. Fall of King's Landing. The death of Jacaerys Valerion filled Renura with anger and hatred, and she decided to use her dragons. With Criston Cole, Aemon Targaryen, and Vhagar away from King's Landing, Daemon Targaryen and Caraxes joined with Renura on Syrax above the capital, while Corlys Valerion's ships sailed into Blackwater Bay. Grand Maester Orwyle, trying to dispatch ravens asking for help, was arrested before any letters could be sent. Riders bearing messages were arrested at the city gates, and the 7 captains commanding the gates we killed or arrested, all by those gold cloaks still loyal to Daemon, who had once commanded them. The city gates were opened for the men arriving with the Valerian fleet. King's Landing fell in less than a day. Lord Larys Strong fled with King Aegon II, Princess Jaehaera, and Prince Maelor. Larys dispatched Jaehaera with Ser Willis fell to Storm's End, and Maelor with Ser Ricard Thorne to Lord Ormond Hightower. All from the Green Council remaining in King's Landing yielded, and Renura took her place on the Iron Throne. Dowager Queen Alicent was spared, but her father, Ser Otto, was beheaded, as was Lord Jasper Wilde. Ser Tyland Lannister was given to the torturers, in the hopes of regaining some of the gold he had hidden. Princes Joffrey and Aegon the Younger, Renura's remaining sons, Viserys was believed to be dead, were called to King's Landing. Aemond and Criston at Harrenhal could no longer agree on a plan of action. Criston wished to withdraw south to join with Lord Ormond Hightower and Prince Daeron Targaryen, while Aemond wished to attack the capital. Criston led the Green's army south, while Aemond remained to ravage the Riverlands, hoping that Renura would send a dragon after him. When she heard that Renura was planning new campaigns against Prince Aemond and Prince Daeron and was not planning to spare them if defeated, Queen Alicent pled for peace while in chains, proposing new terms where the 7 kingdoms would be divided, with Aegon II ruled the Reach, the Stormlands, and the Westerlands from Old Town, while Renura would rule the rest of Westeros from the Iron Throne. Renura rejected these terms, and told Alicent that her sons gave up positions of honor of court when they stole her birthright from her and took the lives of her sons. The Red Kraken. At the beginning of the war, the office of Master of Ships had been offered to Dalton Greyjoy, Lord of the Iron Islands, by the Greens. Renura's council offered Dalton something more to his liking, however, and so House Greyjoy declared for the Blacks. With Lord Jason Lannister dying after the Red Fork, his Lannister army destroyed at the fish feed, and the Green armies of the Reach marching east to Tumbleton, the coasts of the Westerlands only had skeleton defenses. For several years, Dalton and his Ironborn raided and pillaged the coasts of the Westerlands and the Reach. Dalton captured Case and Fair Isle, and though the Ironborn could not force entry into Casterly Rock after Jason's widow Johanna closed its gates, they sacked Lannisport. Butcher's Ball. Prince Aemond burned Derry, Lord Harroway's Town, Lord's Mill, Black Buckle, Claypool, Swinford, and Spiderwood. Ser Criston Cole, going south, found everything in front of him dead: forests, villages, horses, men. His scouts found scenes where armored corpses sat beneath the trees, rotting away, a mockery of the fallen throwing a feast. Seeing multiple corpse feasts during their march, Criston and his men grew accustomed to the sight. At Crossed Elms, however, the corpses were actually disguised blacks who attacked Criston and his men when they were riding past. Criston's Greens were ambushed by River Lords and Roderick Dustin between the God's Eye and the Blackwater Rush. Criston challenged them to single combat, but was refused. The battle was the most decisive in the dance, and after Criston died, his men were killed by the hundreds in the rout. The massacre became known as the Butcher's Ball, and it marked the high point of Renner's fortunes. Prince Daemon took residence at Maidenpool with Nettles, while Aemon terrorized the Riverlands, striking at Stonyhead, the Mountains of the Moon, Sweet Willow and Sallydance, and many more. Each day Caraxes and Sheepstealer unsuccessfully searched for Vhagar from Maidenpool. First Tumbleton. The army of Lord Ormond Hightower, accompanied by Prince Daeron and his dragon Tessarion, slowly advanced on King's Landing, defeating Renura's loyalists wherever they went. While Ormond was leading the siege of Long Table, Prince Maelor Targaryen and his protector, Ser Ricard Thorne, were discovered by a mob of Renura's supporters at Bitter Bridge. Men and women clamored over the 3-year-old boy, each trying to claim him, until the boy was torn to pieces. A vengeful Daeron burned the town with the sack of Bitter Bridge. Princess Jaehaera Targaryen safely arrived at Storm's End with Ser Willis Fell. Ulf the White and Hugh Hammer flew to Tumbleton, but Renura's forces there were greatly outnumbered by the approaching Hightower army. Some refugees were secretly Greens who infiltrated the ranks of the Black's defenders. In addition, Ulf and Hugh, since then known as the Two Betrayers, changed their allegiance to the Greens. Though Ormond and his cousin Ser Brindon died in the First Battle of Tumbleton, killed by Roddy the Ruin, who himself was mortally injured, the Hightower army kept the advantage. The dragons Vermithor, Silverwing and Tessarion let loose their flames upon Tumbleton, which was savagely sacked. Upon learning of Tumbleton, Renura ordered the gates of King's Landing closed and barred. The two betrayers made the Black Council question the loyalty of the other dragon seeds, Ser Adam Valerion and Nettles. Despite Lord Corlys Valerion speaking in their defense, Renura ordered Adam and Nettles arrested. Adam, who had been guarding the dragons at the Dragonpit, was warned by Corlys and escaped on Seasmoke, causing Corlys' arrest. There was chaos in both King's Landing and Tumbleton. Ser Hobart Hightower presumed to take command of the leaderless Green army. Prince Daeron commanded him to stop the sacking, but Hobart was ineffective. Ulf the White, dreaming of High Garden, became angry upon being granted only Bitter Bridge. Hugh Hammer began to dream of a crown of his own. With the Hightower army leaderless, desertions caused the army to shrink every day. Fall of Dragonstone. Around the time of First Tumbleton, the merchant Cogness Arya made a stop at Dragonstone for repairs and provisions, having been driven off course by a storm. They spotted 2 fighting dragons while passing the Dragonmont. Inspired by the story from those of Volantis, local fishermen took their boats for a look the next morning, and they reported the burned and broken remains of the Grey Ghost. Ser Robert Quince, Dragonstone's castellan, named the cannibal as the killer. Lord Larry Strong had disguised King Aegon II during the fall of King's Landing and smuggled him to Dragonstone, where Aegon was later found by Sunfire. It had been Aegon's dragon who had actually killed the Grey Ghost, not the cannibal. Ryder and Dragon went out flying again, regaining strength, while Aegon's supporters found locals willing to betray Renura, due to mislike for her. Poorly defended Dragonstone fell easily, with Robert being slain by Ser Alfred Broom, who was angered at not being named castellan by Renura. Lady Baela, Prince Daemon's daughter, escaped her attackers on her dragon, Moondancer. Sunfire blinded Moondancer with fire, however, and eventually killed the younger dragon after they crashed to the ground. The burned and battered Baela was taken captive, and King Aegon the Elder now held Dragonstone, although he broke his legs in the fighting. Battle above the God's Eye. Renner ordered Lord Manfred Mouton of Maidenpool to send her the head of Nettles. According to Renura, Nettles had become the lover of her husband, Prince Daemon, and was thus guilty of high treason. Nettles was a guest beneath his roof, and killing her would mean breaking guest right and facing Daemon's wrath. Refusing Renura, however, would mean being a tainted, a traitor. Maester Norrin suggested that they had never read the letter, and later that night informed Daemon of Renura's command. Nettles and her dragon, Sheepstealer, departed Maidenpool for parts unknown the next morning. Daemon and Nettles spoke no word of farewell, but when Sheepstealer climbed the sky, Caraxes gave a scream. Daemon told Manfred to spread the word that he would fly for Harrenhal, so Aemond could face him alone. Once Daemon was gone, Lord Mouton took down Renura's banners and raised the golden dragons of King Aegon II. Daemon took Harrenhal from the few who still remained there, and waited for 13 days. On the 14th day, Vhagar appeared with Aemond and his bedmaid, the pregnant seer Alice Rivers. With Alice on the ground, the dragon riders fought in the sky above the God's Eye. Their fight ended as the dragons, locked together, tumbled towards the lake. According to tales, Daemon leapt from Caraxes to Vhagar and drove the Valyrian steel longsword Darksister through Aemond's blind eye. The dragons struck the lake half a heartbeat later. Caraxes crawled beneath the walls of Harrenhal, where he died. Vhagar died in the water, and was found some years later with Aemond's bones still chained to the saddle and with Darksister in his rider's eye socket. Daemon's remains, however, were never found, causing singers to claim he survived to spend his last days with Nettles. It was the 22nd day of the 5th moon of the year 130 AC. Storming of the Dragonpit. In King's Landing, the Valyrian fleet, counting more than half the army that had sailed from Dragonstone, abandoned Renura when they learned Lord Corlys Velaryon was in the Black Cells. Those who remained could no longer be trusted. That same day, Queen Helena threw herself from Maegor's Holdfast and died on the moat's spikes below. Small folk believed she had been murdered by Ser Luther Largent of the Gold Cloaks, however. Her dragon, Dreamfire, rose with a roar, snapping 2 of her chains in the Dragonpit. That night a riot rose in King's Landing. Luther and 500 gold cloaks went to Cobbler's Square to disperse it, but Luther and many of his men were killed by 10,000 rioters. A hedge knight, Ser Perkin the Flea, crowned his squire, Trystane Truefire, declaring him to be King Viserys I Targaryen's bastard. Perkin bestowed knighthood on all who would support Trystane, so many fled to their cause. The next day, some order was restored to parts of King's Landing, but chaos remained in the rest of the city. Having learned about Maidenpool's betrayal and the escape of Nettles, Renura sent ravens to Winterfell and the Eyrie, pleading for more aid. Perkin and Trystane gained strength the next night. The King's Gate and the Lion Gate were opened by rioters, the gold cloaks at the King's Gate having fled, and those guarding the Lion Gate having joined the rioters. With Perkin holding the River Gate, 3 out of 7 gates were now open to enemies. The people of King's Landing no longer believed Renura could protect them. A crazed prophet known as the Shepherd led an even larger mob to the Hill of Rhaenys to kill the dragons. Joffrey mounted Syrax to fly to the Dragonpit. Fearing the worst, Renura ordered her followers to go after him and bring him back. 7 men followed her command, remembered in history as the 7 who rode, Ser Medric Manderly, Ser Loreth Lansdale, Ser Harold Dark, Ser Harmon of the Reeds, Ser Giles Ironwood, Ser Willem Royce, and Ser Glendon Good. Renura's she-dragon was unaccustomed to the boy and he died after being thrown from her back. Meanwhile, the rioters attacked the Dragonpit. Shrikos was slain by the woodsman Hob the Hewer, while Morgul was killed by the Burning Knight. Tyraxes went into his lair and roasted many before dying. Dreamfire slew more than the other 3 dragons combined, until a crossbow blinded one of her eyes. When Dreamfire tried to leap free, the weakened dome crashed on both dragon and dragonslayers. Syrax descended on the survivors. Renura, watching from atop Maegor's Holdfast, held her remaining son, Aegon the Younger, until she saw Syrax fall. Renura's counselors agreed that the city was lost. She was persuaded to leave the next day, slipping through the Dragon Gate for Duskendale. 2nd Tumbleton. News of unrest in King's Landing reached Tumbleton, making the Hightower army believe they should advance upon the city, but Ser Hobart Hightower doubted, and the 2 betrayers refused to join unless their demands were met. With Aemon slain and Aegon II still missing, the Greens found themselves without leaders. Prince Daeron was next in line for the throne, and there were some who wanted to name him Prince of Dragonstone, or even King. Lord Hugh Hammer wanted to be crowned king by right of conquest. He had the oldest and largest dragon alive, Vermithor, thrice as big as Daeron's Tessarion. Ulf the White helped plot Hugh's coronation. Lord Onwin Peake and Hobart summoned 11 other lords and landed knights, who became known as the Caltrops, to plot the deaths of the two betrayers with Daeron's consent. Before the Caltrops could strike, Tumbleton woke at night to find themselves under attack by Adam Valerion, his dragon Seasmoke, and an army of 4,000 blacks loyal to Renura. The Great Green Host encamped at Tumbleton outnumbered their attackers, but had grown lax due to their long stay. Ulf slept through the Second Battle of Tumbleton. Hardhugh was killed by one of the Caltrops, Lord John Roxton, who was then killed by Hugh's men in revenge. Daeron is said to have been killed by Black Trombo or an unknown man-at-arms, or thirdly died from a burning pavilion. Adam and Seasmoke battled the riderless Tessarion and Vermithor, which ended with Vermithor ripping off the head of Seasmoke. Vermithor, due to his wounds, died next. Tessarion, after twice trying to fly, remained in pain. Lord Benjicott Blackwood had Billy Burley end her suffering. Adam also died during the fighting. Though having won the battle, the Rivermen had not been able to take the town. Tumbleton's gates were closed, and without a dragon or equipment, they could not start a siege, so the Rivermen took all they found useful and left. Only one dragon remained at the town, Silverwing. In order to rid the surviving Greens of Ulf the White, Hobart drank poisoned arbor gold with him to their mutual deaths. Without a leader or a rider for Silverwing, Lord Peake led the Green Army in retreat. King's Landing had been saved. Renner's death. Renner a Targaryen was refused entry at Rosby and was allowed to stay only one night at Stokeworth. Half her gold cloaks deserted on the road, and attackers killed several of her knights. At Duskendale they were admitted, but not allowed to stay long. Refusing to part from her son, Aegon the Younger, and without ships, Renura sold her crown to buy passage on a Braavosi ship. She returned to Dragonstone, hoping to hatch a new dragon from the island's dragon eggs. Ser Alfred Broom and his garrison killed Renura's remaining men and captured the queen, her ladies, and Aegon the Younger. Once inside the gates, Renura faced Aegon II Targaryen and the wounded Sunfire. Aegon the Elder fed Renura to his dragon while Aegon the Younger looked on. With the chance that Renura's loyalists would continue the fight in her son's name, Aegon the Younger became a hostage. It was the 22nd day of the 10th month of 130 AC. On the 9th day of the 12th month, Sunfire the Golden died on Dragonstone. After this, Aegon started planning his return to King's Landing. Though Renura had died, her cause lived on. Aegon II would sit the throne again, but it would only last another half of a year. The Moon of the Three Kings. After Renura's forces abandoned King's Landing, chaos took control of the city for several weeks, a period known as the Moon of the Three Kings. The Squire Trystane Truefire, said to be a bastard of the late King Viserys I, was installed by Perkin the Flea in the Red Keep. Meanwhile, a second pretender king was the 4-year-old Gaemon Palehair, who was claimed to be a son of King Aegon II Targaryen and was established atop Visenyau's Hill, at the House of Kisses. Lord Barrows Baratheon seized King's Landing for Aegon. Gaemon was arrested and Trystane was executed after being granted the boon of knighthood. Lord Corlys Valerion, who had been left in the dungeons when Renura fled the city, was freed and named to Aegon's small council. As Aegon II's only remaining heir was his daughter Jaehaera, the widowed king agreed to marry the eldest daughter of Barrows. Battle of the King's Road. With King's Landing secured for King Aegon II Targaryen, Lord Barrows Baratheon led his armies against the Rivermen who were approaching the city on the King's Road. These lads were led by Lord Kermit Tully, Lord Benjicott Blackwood, and Ben's aunt, Alysanne Blackwood. Bloody Ben Blackwood broke the flank of the confident Barrows, and Black Ally led the archers that brought down Barrows's knights. Lord Baratheon killed Lords Derry and Mal Lister, before he himself was killed by Lord Tully. This left King's Landing with only meager defenses, with the lads only a short distance away. Lord Cragen Stark and his forces marched south to reinforce them. Aegon II's death. When the Black Army of the lads was a day's march outside of King's Landing, there were no significant green forces to stop them. Lord Cragen Stark was coming south, and other armies were coming from the Vale of Arryn as well. King Aegon II Targaryen refused to surrender, even when Lord Corlys Valerion, now master of ships on Aegon's small council, advised him that the only remaining option was to surrender and join the Night's Watch. Instead, Aegon gave orders to have an ear cut off his nephew, Aegon the Younger, and have it sent to the lads as a warning. If his bloodline died, so would Renura's. Aegon II was shortly found dead after, with blood on his lips from poisoned wine. Who poisoned the king remains unknown, though 22 men would be arrested. Aftermath. The False Dawn. With King Aegon II Targaryen dead, Aegon the Younger was crowned as King Aegon III Targaryen. Although Aegon II's host had been defeated and the Valyrian fleet once more served the Iron Throne, the period that followed was named the False Dawn. The realm faced numerous problems. The cruel winter that had begun the year before on Maiden's Day of 130 AC would last until 135 AC. Much of the realm had been burned out by dragonfire, in particular, Aemon Targaryen's one-man war riding Vhagar, which had burned out most of the Riverlands. Broken men and outlaws roamed the countryside in the hundreds and thousands, and public order had collapsed in many places. The Ironborn, under the command of Dalton Greyjoy, who had only nominally sided with the Blacks as a pretext to attack wealthy Green Kingdoms, now refused to acknowledge the boy King Aegon III's commands to stop raiding. Red Kraken Stark and his northern army of childless, homeless, and younger men had marched to King's Landing with hopes of adventure. The sudden death of King Aegon II had robbed them of that chance, leaving Kraken furious. He had wanted to punish Storm's End, Casterly Rock, and Old Town for having supported Aegon II over Renura, but upon his arrival, Lord Corlys Velaryon had already sent out ravens, suing for peace. Hour of the Wolf. Red Kraken Stark could not be dissuaded from punishing the betrayers and prisoners of King Aegon II Targaryen. He found the poisoning foul murder, and had 22 men arrested in the name of young Aegon III Targaryen, including Lords Larys Strong and Corlys Velaryon. He then made Aegon name him Hand of the King. Kraken reigned his hand during a day filled with trials and executions. Most of those accused chose to take the Black, chief among them Ser Perkin the Flea, but Ser Giles Belgrave of the Kingsguard and Larys chose death. Corlys was spared a trial thanks to the intervention of Baela and Rhaena Targaryen. The day after the executions, Kraken resigned his hand and returned to the north, leaving many of his Northmen behind in the south. The Regency of Aegon III. With the war over, a council of 7 regents was established for the young Aegon III Targaryen. This regency period was filled with many troubles as the realm struggled to rebuild from the war. Out of the 7 original regents, only Grand Maester Muncan would serve the full term. The first 7 regents were Lord Corlys Velaryon, Lady Jane Arryn, Lord Royce Caryn, Ser Torren Manderly, Lord Manfred Mouton, Grand Maester Muncan, and Lord Roland Westerling. In 135 AC the harsh winter finally ended, and in 136 AC, when he came of age, King Aegon III dismissed his final regents in hand.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.